Hey everybody, I hope you can hear us. We're here at the beautiful Weston Poinsett in downtown Greenville at Spoonbread, and we're going to have high tea. What you have today are two Southern Susans talking about books, having tea, so we thought this would be fun. So our author of the month, of course, this month is Susan Zurenda, and she's with us, and we're going to chat all about her book. You guys have put all kinds of questions and comments and observations. We're going to get to all of those. We're going to start our lunch, and then probably we'll pause this so we can finish up, and then we'll pick it back up, but we're going to get to everybody's questions. So first of all, in case you're curious, I'm having Earl Grey tea. Susan?
And I'm doing the same.
Okay, so we're a bit traditional in our tea choices today. Also, we have wonderful little sandwiches and scones and fresh strawberries, and there's some cakes and then fruit and some little pastries on top. So I'm very excited about getting into this.
We're in for a yummy good time.
Yes, we are. We are very excited about tea at Spoonbread at the Weston Poinsett. If y'all have never been, based on what I've seen so far, I highly recommend it.
Not to mention that it's in your novel.
Yes, exactly. I have used the Weston Poinsett several times
And it's in the current novel.
And part of that is because I so enjoy coming here for research.
Understandable.
All right, so we are going to be talking about The Girl from the Red Rose Motel. Susie's book is back on the back. I call her Susie. Listen, I have known Susan Zurenda for years and years, and I've always called her Susie.
And that's what I'm called.
That's
Yes.
what, okay. But we've worked together for a number of years on other projects. Susie worked for a company that has done publicity work for me before. So years ago, she was coming with me to book signings and helping me with various things. And now I'm just excited we get to talk about one of her books. This is her second novel, and we all enjoyed Bells for Eli a while back, her first novel. And if you haven't read The Girl from the Red Rose Motel, I highly recommend it. I know you'll enjoy it as much as I did. Okay, y'all, Mary's getting in the picture because she is going to tell us what we're having for our afternoon tea. Mary, take it away.
All right. So in the middle too is our sandwiches, and we have chicken salad sandwiches today. We also have a tuna salad. And then in the tuna salad is on wheat bread. The chicken salad is here on croissant. And then closer to you, Susan, is the cucumber and mint sandwich.
They're delicious. I've already been to
I
those.
tried that.
Yeah. And then we also add scones and pound cake as well, and that's at the very bottom here. So there's two different scones, blueberry and cranberry. We also have pound cake, a selection of that. I think it's cinnamon today. It's like lemon as well. And all these items are the chef's choice. So again, they change regularly. They're not the same all the time. And then, of course, on the very top, the best part is all the goodies and the metaphors. So we have today some eclairs. There's a little chocolate peanut butter cup. There's some cheesecake with a filling on top, and chocolate brownies, and a few strawberries too to make it a little bit more healthier.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have our healthy things.
Exactly. But y'all enjoy, and tune if you need anything else, just let me know, and I'll be back over in a few minutes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are back. We've had most of our lunch, but we're still snacking. And, we have a couple of mimosas here to help us get into our topic, our meaty topic of The Girl from the Red Rose Motel. So, Susan, first of all, we're gonna get to all your questions, but there are a few things that we want to go over to establish sort of the groundwork, and we'll build up to it. But we're going to get to all your questions. Most of them have to do with the ending. But first of all, let's start at the beginning. Talk to us, Susie, about the setting. Is Ramsey a real town? Is it based on a real town? Tell us about Ramsey.
Ramsey is a fictitious town in South Carolina in 2012, but a lot of the setting comes out of my experience. I taught English for 33 years, and the last 10 years were at Spartanburg High School. And so that setting, which is big in the novel, is really based on that school. And so much of the inspiration for the book kind of comes out of the kinds of classes I was teaching there.
Okay. So is Ramsey, fictional Ramsey, is it close to where we are now? We're in Greenville. We're in beautiful downtown Greenville, South Carolina. Is it close by here?
I imagine it as a town in the upstate. At one point in the novel, Sterling and Hazel go to Asheville, and Asheville, North Carolina is an hour away from them. So it could be we can have any fictitious town in the upstate.
Okay, all right. So did you intend for this to be a YA novel or a coming of age novel? Was that your intent?
No, it is an adult novel. My publisher markets it as an adult novel. If you've read it, you know it's got some mature things in it. But that said, I think mature teenagers could certainly read it and I hope find some meaning in it for themselves and where they are in life. I had a mother ask me just a couple of days ago, she bought the book and she said, "Do you think my 15-year-old can read it?" And I said, "I think that's up to you. I think you need to read it and you need to make that decision."
Right.
There's probably nothing in there that most 15-year-olds don't know, but
Probably not.
up to the parent.
So is the story based on experiences that you had as a teacher?
Just to some degree. There are really two experiences in this novel that were based on real things that happened to me in the classroom at Spartanburg High School. One of them is not that I had an affair with the principal. That's in the novel.
Well, I was going to ask you that later,
Yes.
but since we
Yes,
covered it,
yes.
if I can check that
I mean,
one
it
off.
comes, I don't know, I am not Angela Wilmore, the English teacher in the novel. She's a lot nicer and funkier than I ever was. But I don't believe I could probably have created her characters authentically had I not been a teacher. But of those two experiences that are real in the novel, the first one is what catapults the novel into action when several arrogant, brilliant, miscreant boys take over Angela Wilmore's classroom. And that really happened to me. There was a group of 8 boys that I taught one year, not all in the same class. They were all smart. They were all going to great schools. They all came from pretty, influential families. And they had banded together in middle school, and they had been terrorizing their classrooms all the way through. I mean, all the students knew it. All the teachers knew it. The guidance counselors tried to keep them separated. But you can't do that when they all take the same classes. So when the scene in the novel opens and they're 3 in real life, but 4 boys take over Angela's classroom, boys who call themselves the Crazy Eights, and I call them the Hateful Eightful in life and in the novel. They literally took over my class in real life. I had never stopped teaching a class before, and I never did it again, but I did it that day. And when I stopped and left my anthology on the lectern, the ringleader came up and started teaching the play. And I said, that was that. And I went to the assistant principal and I had him put an in-school suspension. So that worked really well because Sterling, my character, who I think of as an amalgam of those 8 boys, lands in this lowly place. He never imagined himself. But there he has the opportunity to meet Hazel, who is about as different from him as anyone could be, but a very unlikely, of course, relationship begins.
Okay. So tell us about Hazel. What was the inspiration for this character?
When I was writing the novel, I mentioned I'm not Angela, but I was an English teacher. I've mentioned that Sterling is an amalgam of the real life hateful. When I was writing the novel, I had no conscious model for Hazel in my mind, and Susan can attest to this. Sometimes your subconscious just will take over for you, and you're kind of the medium, and so her character began to emerge. I had taught students like Hazel, and I mentioned I had very different classes. At Spartanburg High School, I had 4 12th grade AP classes: your smartest, your brightest, education valued in the home. And my 5th class was something called reading strategies. And these were kids who had failed the 8th exam and they couldn't graduate from high school. And so I'd never taught reading, but there I was, charged with helping them improve their reading skills to try to pass. Some of them did, some of them didn't. So I knew, I knew about impoverished students and impoverished students where, you can't value education in poverty because you're just trying to get from one day to the
Mhm.
next. But I didn't have a specific person.
Mhm.
Okay, after I finished the book, turned it into my agent, I was sitting on my sofa one afternoon, and I guess I was thinking about my character, and I all of a sudden remember this young woman in real life. Her name was Rakesha, whom I taught in reading strategies. And I thought, my goodness, like Hazel, Rakesha was very sweet. She was very determined. And I just, the more I thought about it, then I found this thank you note that Rakesha had written to me on a piece of trashed poster board because she couldn't afford a store card, and we teachers saved some memorabilia. And I read the note on the back of that card in pencil. It was on a poster board, and she talked about not having liked to read, but now she did, and she looked forward to her life. And I think she even said, I love you for what we did, what you did. I love you, Missy, and I wish the best for your family.
Oh.
And I put that down, and I thought, you know what? You never know, because now I wonder
Right.
if
she was in your
if she was in my subconsciously all along. So So I don't know that definitively, but we never know what our minds give us.
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about the reasons Sterling is so drawn to Hazel, this girl who is so different from him.
Exactly. Well, there's several things in Sterling's life. First of all, in his background as a kid, he was the kid with big Dumbo ears, and he was a very overweight kid, and he was mocked and bullied, and so he knows and understands intuitively what shame is and what shame feels like. Now, he's from a wealthy family. He gets sent to a camp that helps him reduce that weight off of him. He has surgery and the ears are fixed, but that's still living inside of him. So when he meets Hazel, and at first he's clueless, but when he begins to understand her circumstances, he can relate on that level to where she is. Now, initially, of course, he's attracted to her because she's just so beautiful. She's exotically beautiful, different from him. And he's also he's at a place in his life where he's feeling boxed in, and he wonders if that's kind of how he landed at ISS, why he went over the line with his English teacher, that he's just so tired of being told what friends he can have, what he's supposed to do, and he wants to be himself. So there are a number of factors in Sterling, I hope, that make it certainly believable that he would really eventually fall in love with Hazel.
Okay. I see it. I thought we did a good job developing that.
Thank you.
So, all right, this is actually one of your book club questions from the website.
Okay.
I did read through there to see, and I pulled some of those and then some of those from the group as well. But this is why this will sound familiar. So, Angela Wilmore is blindsided when a student's parents, Donovan and Jenny Powell, attempt to censor the literature she teaches in her AP English class. Teachers in the real world of public school education often face such challenges. Angela refuses to submit to parental oversight of her curriculum, and then you ask the reader, how do you feel about her response? So y'all be thinking about this and tell us in comments how you feel about the way she responded. But I want you to tell us from Angela's point of view how that works, and what you think about it. Tell us what you think about it.
So I said earlier there were two experiences in the book based on my real life. And that's the second one. Interesting. I would call it the most horrific ordeal that I really ever experienced as a teacher was with a couple who didn't come to me, but went straight to the administration challenging, and I used the same story that is in real life. I was teaching a Margaret Atwood story, ironically called Happy Endings. And they wanted a meeting, so I met with the principal, the couple, me, and in real life, the English department head was there as well, but she's not there in the book. And the woman never spoke, which tells you something right there. And he came in talking about how the story was lewd and had horrible language. Now, let me remind you, this is an AP classroom. This is a college textbook. This is not it's an approved college textbook to teach AP English by the state of South Carolina. And then, so he's talking about all the lewd language. And then he pulls this list out of his pocket of authors who've been published in Playboy. And of course, Margaret Atwood has been published in, or fiction.
I had no idea.
Yeah, her fiction's been in Playboy. But then again, so was Ernest Hemingway, and so was Silverstein, who, you know, children's author of some of the best American
this is not
authors.
the story that was published in Playboy that you're reading.
Exactly. But even the one published in Playboy was probably just fine.
Right.
I mean, some of our greatest American authors have been published in Playboy. So in my mind, I'm thinking, wait a minute, mister, aren't you undercutting your own argument? So are you saying we don't read any American authors? Of course, Margaret Atwood's Canadian, but we don't read any American authors who've been. But then I started thinking, well, maybe you've been reading Playboy, buddy. But anyway, it was very shaming for me to be demeaned that way, to be, for him to insinuate that I didn't know what I was doing, and I'd been teaching English forever with a master's degree and 30 hours above it, to act like I didn't know what I was doing in my job, and it was very humiliating, very demeaning, and I was very fortunate back then, it's been some years, that the administration was very supportive of me. And when it was finally over, the principal was young, and he didn't see what was coming. He was blindsided, and he said, okay, I threw you under the bus. I didn't mean to, but I didn't know. I didn't know what was coming at me. He said, I taught PE. And he said, I'll just make this promise to you. You will never have to see that man again. You go on about your business and teach your classes. So I was very lucky. But it's not really true today. I mean, we're going through a real crisis with book censorship in this state and in this country. In Beaufort, South Carolina, for example, one person got 97 books banned, removed from the curriculum and libraries in Beaufort County. Now, since then, all but 5 have been restored. But look at all the brouhaha that's caused, and all of the manpower, woman power that's taken. And you asked me how, what do I think about that? Here's what I think. We got to trust our librarians and trust teachers with experience to know what they're doing. That nobody wants their kids to read a trashy novel. Of course not.
This is a complex issue.
It is.
And there are all sorts of perspectives.
Yes.
And your example is one, this Margaret Atwood story, that's one example. There are other instances where children are reading things that most people would agree are not appropriate.
That's right. That's right. There you go.
Right.
If you've got most people, if there's something out there that's been published by a traditional mainstream publisher that somehow is not appropriate, then you have to trust that the school administration and the libraries will take care of that.
I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree with it, and obviously I don't want to get into a debate. This is not a forum for that. But I do think that there are some parents who have legitimate concerns.
Oh, yes.
And when a parent has legitimate concern, ultimately the parent is the person who is in charge of their children's welfare over and above the education system.
Oh, yeah.
And so if they're concerned, I think you had the right answer in the book. If that parent had legitimate concern about their daughter, then the daughter can read something different, and that's fine.
Right. That's right.
But she doesn't need to dictate, he doesn't need to dictate
what
everybody else's children
right.
can read. That's between them and their parents,
because,
not for him to dictate.
And I think, you have to remember, he's asked for his daughter. I mean, his daughter's in a college classroom. She's not in a high school class, and that's it. And I offered that option. I said she can go into honors, and she'll have a high school anthology. But you know, he didn't want to do that. And I mean, that's fine. But it all worked out, and I didn't hear from him again. But it was just, I suppose, I was not a young teacher. You know, I was an experienced teacher, and I had never been challenged in that way. I mean, I'd had challenges over the years, and I'd given kids alternate assignments over the years.
And I think that's what most teachers do if there's a problem.
Exactly.
Is they say, okay, read this instead. Because who has the energy?
No, nobody. Oh, I even had years, when I was a very young teacher, a mother objected. I was teaching A Wrinkle in Time to 8th graders.
I love that.
Hedwig Linkle.
I love that book
I was
so much.
teaching-
What was the objection to that?
She thought I was teaching the occult because there was a, you know, I'm having a senior moment. The ball. Look, you look in the. Oh, what do you call it when you look in the ball, like in the Wizard of Oz?
Crystal ball.
Crystal ball.
Yeah.
Thank you, Susan. Wouldn't come to me. So because the crystal ball was in there, she thought I was teaching the occult, and I tried to explain to her that Lingle was Episcopalian and Christian, and you know, had all these. She wasn't hearing it, so I just said, "Fine, he'll read something else."
Right. I didn't mean to take us off on a tangent.
No, but it's a good discussion.
There
It's a
are
good discussion.
many topics in your book, and this is one of them. You know, what is the appropriate way for parents to express concern? And it's not, you know, censoring what other people's children can read.
Yeah, we would certainly agree. A parent has a right to talk to a teacher or in the library, whatever, about what is best for their children, but they don't have the right to dictate
the curriculum
for everybody.
No, they don't. No, well, it's a meaty topic.
It
and
is.
Feel free to engage in meaty discussion. Disagree with anybody, Susan, me, anybody else in the group.
That's what makes life fun.
Make your point, but everybody be kind about other people's points.
That's right. Yes, all of our worldviews.
To polite dissension. Okay, next question. I think we're going to do this way from now on.
Isn't this wonderful? This has been the most delightful afternoon.
This is a lot of fun. Okay, next question. Tell us about the inspiration, you've already answered this, for the character Angela Wilmore. So that was basically you.
No, like I said, sometimes I think maybe she's some part of my alter ego. She's kind of a hippie, you know, and I never was really like that. You know, she drives around in a VW bug and always has a live daisy on her dashboard, and she's just kind of easy and laid back. And ask any of my former students. No,
you were not that cool.
No, I was not that cool.
Now, actually, in an unrelated piece of information about me, I actually at one point drove a Beetle. I had a lime green Volkswagen Beetle,
lime green,
and it had a little flower, a daisy in the little cup thing.
See, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know how cool I was at that time. I was picking up my granddaughter from nursery school in the lime green Beetle. She thought it was the coolest thing
I'm sure
ever.
she did.
Yeah. Anyway, that was fun. Okay, so talk to us about Sterling. Do you think he is more mature and thoughtful than the average upper socioeconomic raised young man?
I think that's part of his struggle. I think he's trying to be. You know, I think he's followed the crowd. He's been a conformist, but he had some different experiences as a child, so he kind of sees the world or understands maybe a depth that a bunch of guys or girls, for that matter, either at his age wouldn't. You know, at an age where they've been brought up a certain way, they've been brought up around affluence, they've been brought up in a bubble, and they just kind of take life for granted. But I think Sterling is, I think he is. He's arrogant, he's full of himself, but obviously he does have the capacity for empathy. Or he couldn't, and of course Hazel has a lot to do with helping him mature and helping him to tap into his empathy. And for his teacher too, you know, who earns his respect, you know, because he's been arrogant, and all those boys think they know more than their teachers do, and so I think he probably if he's not more mature in the beginning, he certainly shows that he has a depth in him that allows him to grow.
Right. So let's talk about Courtney. Boy, that girl's a piece of work.
Oh, geez.
So, beyond the fact that Courtney is Sterling's ex-girlfriend, this is another one of your book club questions. What motives does Courtney have and her friends for sabotaging Hazel by planting the knife in her handbag?
Well, Courtney's been spurned more or less by Sterling, who, she's the ultra popular, beautiful girl. She's a cheerleader, and she's been spurned by Sterling. It's humiliating, and then it's also what happened to my handsome boyfriend, and everything was fine and everything was good, and she's one of those girls that's been brought up in that kind of environment to think, well, if I want it, I can have it, and if I don't have it, then I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get it.
And it's interesting. Courtney's a complex character because you have to have some level of sympathy for Courtney because her father is very overbearing and is hard on her and her mother. And so she's not necessarily being raised with positive parenting examples.
Exactly. Yeah, her model, she's got this father who really looks down on women, and she's having to fight her own battles, rebellion, with that father and that mousy mother, and she doesn't want to be like that mother. She wants to be her own person. So yes, I think, and Sterling acknowledges that. He feels for Courtney and what she has to deal with at home, but in the end, of course, decides that doesn't excuse her framing, her and her friends framing Hazel or trying to get her in trouble and get her expelled from school so that they can triumph.
Okay. So how do the contrasting settings of Hazel's home at the rundown Red Rose Motel and Sterling's formal Georgian home symbolize each character's desire? This is one of your questions.
Yes, and I think it's an ironic sort of. Well, their desires are ironic. Here's Sterling living in a very affluent home, an affluent neighborhood, and what he desires is to see more of the real world, or to experience it, or to figure out what life is going to be for himself without it being dictated to him. Yes, I have to follow in my father's footsteps. Yes, I have to own all these properties. And then Hazel, living in the rundown Red Rose Motel, of course, has the aspiration to get out of that hellhole and to figure out how could life be different? How could it be better? And of course, Sterling has a lot to do with opening up her worldview and helping her to see and believe and understand that she's human too, and that she can do things for herself. And it's kind of like you've got one in this, you think you've got it made, I've got the world by the tail, world, wanting to see what else is out there, and then you've got an impoverished person, of course, wanting to see. So it's kind of crisscrosses.
Right. So let's talk for a minute about the Red Rose Motel. So you seem to explore the issues of affordable housing a bit. I believe I recall one of your characters referring to Sterling's father as a slumlord, and I know Jonathan did in the review that he did refer to him as little better than a slumlord. Do you see him that way? And is he a villain in this story? And I guess a follow-on, I'm just going to ask you all the questions and let you deal with it. If the hotel weren't available, would Hazel and her family have been on the streets? And so what exactly should the person who owns this hotel, what is his responsibility to his tenants, and how does that, obviously we need someone to own affordable housing and take care of it and take care, but
that's a really good
it's
question.
A business. And so this is another complex, this is another one of those complex issues.
It is complex. It's very complex because Sterling's father is making his livelihood, and one of the ways he does it is he's a property owner, and the rundown Red Rose Motel is one of the properties he owns. Now, I mean, you can argue that he should be making sure that there isn't any mold in the room, or there isn't this, or it isn't that, and at least having sort of a decent place to stay in. So I don't, but as you say, they are the sheltered homeless. They're not living in the woods, and that is a step up.
Right.
That is a step up from that. And researching the lives of families. Now, we're not, here's who we think about always living in a rundown motel, prostitute or drug dealer or, that sort of thing. But the truth is that families, end up in these predicaments. And there are a lot of reasons, bad credit, but been evicted, nobody will rent to me, no family
problems,
support, health problems.
medical debt, there are all kinds of reasons. Everybody's story's different.
Yeah, that families end up like this. And yes, I mean, it is better than the woods, but what happens, and this is from the research I've done, is that it just becomes this terrible psychological state, because a motel like the Red Rose is a liminal state. It's a home and it's not a home. You're grateful to have a bed, any bed to sleep in, but you want out. And when you can't find a way out, then all these things, depression, frustration, guilt, shame, all these things mount. And then it becomes a vicious circle, as it does for Hazel's parents in the novel. And it gets, worse and worse, because 4 people living in a however many square foot room, sleeping, it's very it's a difficult psychological situation, absolutely. But, and when it comes down to it, like you said, maybe it's not, completely Hugh Lovell's, Sterling's father's fault. I mean, he's making his money doing whatever. At the bottom of the situation is the lack of, I think, one of the huge things is lack of affordable housing. And one quick statistic, and then I know you want to move on, but this was a statistic for 2021, so you can only imagine. So we've come a couple of years from that. In 2021, you had to make something like $24.96 an hour to live in a very modest 2-bedroom rental. And we're not talking about Beaufort, Greenville, where we're talking about just bare minimum getting by. And those places, they don't exist, There's a new apartment complex in Spartanburg where I live, and 10% of it is affordable housing. It's $1,200 a month for affordable housing. Somebody who's making $24.96 a month can't pay that. So I think that's one of the huge issues, and I don't know how our country's going to address it, but that's...
I don't know either, and I think it is important to have people like Sterling's father who own places that are accessible to people. I think he has a minimum responsibility to keep it
a minimum responsibility to keep
it in good repair.
Right, and not an unhealthy place.
Right, not an unhealthy place. And the tenants themselves have a certain responsibility for upkeep of their particular unit or whatever, keeping it clean or whatever.
Sure.
But, I think that somewhere there's a happy medium where, it is a business for him. Maybe he doesn't need to make quite the margins he's making, and he puts more money into the place. But it's not his fault that these people are in that predicament.
No,
and
it's
he is
not
offering them shelter.
Yeah.
So I did not see him as a villain.
And I don't think I didn't intend for him to be a villain. It's more like it is what it is.
Right.
In South Carolina, in Spartanburg, and I guess it may be more in Greenville, but to live in a motel, it's going to cost you about $500 a week, more if you pay by the night. And there's where it becomes a problem. You're paying a whole lot more, and these people have to do it because they can't raise the money for a deposit, or maybe they don't have the credit history, whatever they need to get into an apartment. The credit, you have to have 2 or 3 months worth of rent. So now you're talking, you got to have about $5,000-6,000. Most of these folks, they can't do that, or like I say, they've been evicted, so they can't find a place to rent. So I think where the wrong in it comes is that you are charging way over. You know, when you're charging $500 a week for a room where the toilet leaks,
Right.
it's a very small space. That's where, you know, if you were charging a fair price, you know.
So you have to charge a fair price. You have to keep it in good repair. But they serve a purpose. People who own, you know, even very minimal type shelter things, and it's a problem too in that if you, okay, let's say someone were very altruistic and they're saying, okay, I don't want to make any money on this. It just has to be a self-supporting enterprise because I'm making money other ways. So I'm going to put a bunch of money into this and I'm going to make it really nice. The first thing that's going to happen is that people who are not that poor are going to be going, wow, I can live over, look how nice that place is. I can live there and it's less than what I'm paying here. And so then they've just displaced someone who is, you know, and now you're gentrifying it. You know, so you have to be careful. You don't make it too attractive, and so it's like, how do you balance that? I don't know.
And then there's just simply before I went on my book tour this fall, a woman in Spartanburg whom I interviewed, she started an organization called CAST, Care, Accept, Share, Teach, because she was a guidance counselor and she became aware of these kids having to live, you know, in these circumstances. And her group's main mission, they've been going a long time now, is to help these families raise the money for deposit to get out, but then try to find a place where they can continue to pay. And she rode me, we rode all around the city, and we rode by some affordable housing because it's federally subsidized. It's a good looking place, you know, you and I would be fine, but there's just not much out there. You know, she had just placed a woman with 5 children in a unit at the subsidized housing, but that woman had waited 2 years for it to be available. So there's just all kinds.
I just need way more of it.
We need a lot more of it, but you're right too. You know, how do you control, like you say, well, this looks pretty good.
Yeah, how do you make sure you're serving the people who need it and not, I mean, I don't know. And these are issues for people with way more education on this topic than me.
Right.
But your book does address these and make you think.
I appreciate it. I wanted to bring awareness.
Right.
You know, I wanted to bring awareness to the situation.
Right. Well, I think you've given us all a lot to think about. Okay. By the end of the novel, Hazel proves she has matured from an insecure, unsure young woman into a person with a strong sense of self. What influences and circumstances foster her growth and how? This is not the question about the ending. We're going to get there next. This is the pre-ending question. How does she get there?
Good. Okay. Well, if you've read the novel, you know that Sterling first thinks of her as a scared rabbit. She's meek. She is full of shame, so she just tries to hide, you know, as rabbits will. And there's the scene in the book where he figures out that she's living at the Red Rose Motel because he has to go with his father one frigid morning to help him thaw water pipes, and he sees her cleaning the motel office. One of the ways, of course, is Sterling. He genuinely cares about her, and he keeps encouraging her and pulling her along, and even when these girls ignore her and call her trash, you know, he keeps, you know, saying, no, that's not true. And I think also Angela Wilmore, who offers support that her family can't. She ends up becoming Hazel's foster mother, which is, and that helps Angela too, you know, who's never had her own child. They all help each other. All three of these very different characters help each other. So Hazel does have these human beings, these two human beings who really help her. But also, you know, I hate to quote a cliche, but sometimes what doesn't kill us, you know, but struggles can make you stronger. And when we pick up with Hazel at the Red Rose Motel, it's at this point in her life where a whole lot of things are going to happen that, you know, to her father, to her mother, where she ends up being the person who has to take responsibility. And it's not like she thinks she can do it or she wants to do it, it's that she has no other choice but to do it. And through that, though, she's growing. She's maturing, so that by the time we get to the end of the novel, she's gained a lot of self-confidence, both through her relationships with Hazel and Angela, but also through her own struggles. She's gained a lot of confidence, and I hope it's believable that she decides to make her own decision in the end.
Okay, so walk us through this ending, Susie. So tell us, of course we read the story, we know that Hazel makes her own choice, and she approaches Sterling's parents without his knowledge, because she's not telling Sterling about this baby. She's decided she's going to handle this herself, and she's not going to, for altruistic reasons, I think. She's trying to protect him.
Sure, I think so.
Wants him to have his education and his future. So she cares about him. So she's doing this in the way she sees it, both in their best interest. And she decides that she's going to approach them for funding for this home. And she signed papers to go here. So walk us through this and your vision of the ending and how this is.
Right. So if you've read the novel, you know that a number of things happen. Once Hazel gets pregnant, she's very naive about it and what she can do and what she can't do, but she's come far enough at that point to know that there won't be any way for her to move forward in her life, for her to get an education, for her to get out of the world, and I mean this metaphorically, the world of the Red Rose Motel, the world of poverty, if she has a child to take care of. She's also mature enough to know that if Sterling would probably do right, he would marry her, but she knows him too. He's still got this side to him he's still a teenage boy, regardless, and he's a teenage boy looking forward to going to a top-tier school, and that's where he'll grow more and where he will mature, and she is forward-thinking enough to know that, okay, yes, he would do that, but what's going to happen down the road? Will he be resentful of that? He won't be able to go to school the way he wants. And so it is for Sterling, but it's also for her too. She doesn't want to end up in that situation where you've got her and Sterling just at odds at each other's throats because of what has happened. So it's not just for his benefit, but it's for her benefit too. She's listened to Miss Wilmore and she's lived in this world and she sees what another world can be like. I'm not talking about affluence necessarily. I'm just talking about independence.
Right.
And so she looks at her options, and I think somewhere in the novel, this is what she says, that it is because of love that she really makes the decision that she makes. Love for herself, love for Sterling, and love for the child.
Right.
Because she knows she can't bring a child into the world. She certainly doesn't want to burden her mother with that. If she brought this child into the world under her care, she doesn't think that would be the loving thing to do. And she, this sounds crazy to say, but I kind of let her tell me that. I didn't really know myself after the abortion got botched. I didn't really know myself what Hazel was going to do, and she just kind of told me, well, I'm going to do what I can understand is the most loving thing to do.
So, in your mind, Hazel has made her decision and she has executed the decision.
Yes.
Because she's going to this home. She's on her way. She's on the bus. She's going to this home, and she's going to have the baby. Put the baby in for adoption.
She signed the papers, and that has made her entry there and the finances easier. And that is her plan when the novel ends. Now, lots of people have asked me about a sequel, and it's not out of possibility because obviously lives will go on here.
Right.
Hazel's life will go on. This baby's life will go on. Sterling's life will go on. Angela's will. And that's not out of the realm of possibility.
Now that's interesting because you could have several novels there. You could have one that explores Hazel's future down the road, one that explores Sterling's, one that explores,
what happens to the
Angela,
child,
and then the child. You could dial into this child's life when the child is a teenager or going to college or whatever.
Write it for me.
See how it all turns out.
See this fine novelist over here doing this plotting?
So, I mean, you've got several different ways you could explore these characters further if you wanted to. Now,
That's
you
right.
may have other things that you want to explore in mind, and I think we're, well, let me just make sure we've covered everyone's.
But I don't want, I hope people can, this is, for me, the end is Hazel coming to into a sense of herself. It's about her character and what happens inside her, that she knows who she is and has a notion of what she needs to do in the world. And that's the way I see the end. Although, of course, it's not one of those neatly tied up, happily ever after, but it is happy in a lot of ways. I mean, everybody's in a pretty good place. She's got challenges, and it isn't going to be easy for her, but she feels good about the decision.
Right. Okay, so I think you've given us a lot to think about, and you've left yourself, even if you weren't planning sequels, you have plenty of room for sequels. But what are you currently working on? What is next for Susan Zurenda?
Well, I'm playing around. I'm kind of struggling with structure, but Susan and I were talking about this earlier when we were having this delicious tea, about a story that I might tell based on the real life of a young woman. Well, she's young to me. She's 42 now. She was 40 when I met her. A young woman who had a pretty horrific life, whose mother literally just gave her away to an older man in marriage when she was 15, and it just goes downhill from there in her real life. Who had a lot of struggles, but whose life has ultimately triumphed. Kind of like Hazel, I guess you'd say. Only this young woman's life is really far worse than Hazel's, because she's not facing abuse really in her life. Her father's no picnic, but that's kind of what I'm working on, is a novel based on this woman's life.
Well, we look forward to reading that when you are finished with it. All right, so I think that we have covered everything that we meant to cover about the girl at the Red Rose Motel and Girl from the Red Rose Motel. If I could get the title right, that would be helpful. We had such a wonderful time with tea here and our mimosas and the beautiful Weston Poinsett and spoon bread. Y'all come try it if you haven't. I'm sorry.
It's just been so much fun, and I appreciate Susan interviewing me. And I know you all know, because you've read Susan's book, that the Weston Poinsett where we are is featured in Big Trouble on Sullivan's Island.
It is. I use the Weston in a couple of my books actually, and probably will use it again because I really like it a lot, and it's convenient for research. So I like my characters to come to Greenville on occasion, because I love Greenville too. I love Charleston.
Yes.
But I love Greenville as well, so I try to bring them back and forth. All right. Well, thank you, Susan, for joining us today.
Thank you,
And
Susan,
you all,
for asking me, and I'm just honored.
Thank you. And you all, if you have questions for Susie, leave them in comments. If you have anything you want to ask me, leave that in comments too, and we will check in with y'all and answer any questions that you have once this is posted on Thursday evening. This has been a lot of fun. All right, y'all, have a good one. Take care.
Bye-bye.